Have you ever felt like you're stuck in a loop? You try to change. You promise yourself, never again. You read the books, set the goals, even pray for strength. And yet, somehow, you find yourself back where you started. Same mistake. Same regret. Same version of you, just in a different chapter. Why does this happen? Why do we keep falling into the same patterns, repeating the same choices that we know, deep down, will hurt us? It's easy to blame ourselves. To feel weak or broken. We call it a lack of discipline. We beat ourselves up. We make it personal. But what if the problem isn't that we are flawed? What if we are just asleep? In Buddhist wisdom, there's a gentle answer to this cycle. The Buddha didn't shame people for their mistakes. He didn't say, try harder. He said, wake up. You see, the reason we repeat pain isn't always because we want to, it's because we are unaware. We are reacting, not responding. We are stuck in habits formed by years of conditioning, fears, and unmet needs. And when those patterns run on autopilot, they quietly guide our lives. Until we become conscious of them. Buddhism teaches that suffering doesn't make you unworthy. It makes you human. The goal is not to punish yourself every time you slip, but to observe. To be honest with yourself, not harsh. To say, I see it now. This is the loop. And I don't have to keep spinning in it. And in that moment of awareness, no matter how small, the cycle begins to break. Let me ask you something. Can you remember the last time you made a mistake and instead of judging yourself, you just breathed? You let yourself be human and chose to learn, not blame. That's the path the Buddha pointed to, not perfection, but liberation through awareness. So if you're here today, frustrated that you keep going in circles, know this. You're not lost. You're just being invited to wake up. Gently. Kindly. One breath at a time. The loop we keep returning to. Have you ever noticed how life seems to circle back on itself? We try to change. We make bold decisions. We tell ourselves, this time will be different. And yet a few weeks, a few months down the line, we're right back where we started. The same argument. The same reaction. The same version of ourselves we thought we left behind. It can feel frustrating, even defeating. Like we're broken. Like all the inner work didn't amount to anything. But here's something we rarely hear. According to Buddhist wisdom, this isn't a sign of failure. It's a sign that we are still waking up. You see, the Buddha never scolded people for their patterns. He didn't say, try harder, or you're not good enough. Instead, he pointed with compassion and said, look. Just look clearly. Because the root of this endless cycle isn't laziness or lack of willpower. It's avidya, a Sanskrit word that means not seeing clearly. We keep returning to the same place. Not because we want to suffer, but because we don't fully see the inner workings of our own minds. We live on autopilot. Reacting, not choosing. Trying to fix the outer world, while the inner world remains unseen. Imagine trying to escape a maze blindfolded. No matter how hard you run, you'll keep hitting the same walls. That's what avidya feels like. But here's the shift, the Buddha invites us to take off the blindfold, gently. Not with blame, not with shame, but with curiosity. He teaches that real change doesn't come from forcing ourselves to be different, but from understanding why we repeat. Seeing clearly is the first act of freedom. So the next time you catch yourself back in that old familiar loop, pause. Breathe. Not with judgment, but with wonder. Ask, what am I not seeing clearly here? That question alone can open the door to a new path. Because healing isn't a straight line. It's a spiral. And every time you return, you're not in the same place. You're just being given another chance to see deeper. Living on autopilot, the trap of unconscious reactions. Let me ask you something. Have you ever walked into a dark room, searching for the light switch, and before you even find it, you bump into the same corner of the same table again? You know it's there. You've hit it before. But until the light is on, you just keep walking into it. That's exactly what it's like to live without awareness. Most of us are living in the dark, reacting, not responding. We repeat the same arguments with people we love. We fall into the same temptations, the same habits, the same emotional spirals. Not because we want to, but because it's what we know. It's what's familiar. And over time, these automatic responses become so deeply embedded that we start calling them just the way I am. But that's not true. That's not who you are, that's just who you've practiced being. The Buddha called this unconscious living a form of suffering. Not because we're being punished, but because when we don't see clearly, we suffer unnecessarily. Like walking in the dark and wondering why we are always bruised. The solution isn't to judge yourself for every misstep. It's to turn on the light. And that light is mindfulness. Mindfulness doesn't mean sitting cross-legged on a mountain. It means being present, right here, right now. It's the moment you pause before speaking sharply. The breath you take before reacting from a wounded place. It's catching yourself in the act, not to scold yourself, but to see. Because when you can see the impulse behind the reaction, when you can notice the fear, the insecurity, the craving underneath, you start gaining a kind of power. The power to choose differently. We don't escape old patterns by fighting them. We outgrow them by becoming more conscious of them. So maybe the next time you find yourself snapping, shutting down, or running away, you could ask, what table am I bumping into again? And more importantly, where is the switch? Because awareness, simple, quiet awareness, is the beginning of freedom. And once the light is on, you'll never walk that room the same way again. The mind is a prison of habit. There's a quiet but powerful teaching from the Buddha that says, what we think, we become. What we think often becomes the tendency of our mind. And it's true, isn't it? You think something. Then you act on it. Then that action reinforces the thought. And before long, you're no longer choosing your life, your patterns are choosing it for you. It's like a loop. Think, react. Until the loop becomes a cage. You wake up and already feel behind. You speak before thinking. You assume the worst. And then tell yourself, that's just how I am. But is it? Or is it just how your mind has been trained to be? You see, the mind is incredibly loyal to what it knows. Even if what it knows is painful. If you feed it fear every day, it will find more reasons to be afraid. If you rehearse anger or resentment, even silently, it will start to color everything you see. Not because you want to suffer, but because that's the track that's been playing the longest. But here's the beautiful part. We can change the channel. Yes, the mind is shaped by habit. But habit can be reshaped through awareness. That's what Buddhist practice is really about. Not escaping the world. Not pretending to be calm while boiling inside. But planting different seeds. Seeds of presence. Seeds of compassion. Seeds of curiosity instead of judgment. You might not see change overnight. But think about this. If you watered a bitter plant every day, it grew strong. Now you've chosen to stop watering it and start planting something new. Of course, it will take time. But that's how every garden begins. One conscious choice at a time. So maybe the next time your thoughts spiral, pause. Don't try to fix everything at once. Just ask, what am I rehearsing right now? And is this the kind of thought I want to grow? Because you are not your habits. You are not your past reactions. You are the awareness that sees all of it and still has the freedom to choose again. And in that choice, the prison walls begin to crack. The second root, craving, tan. When we hear the word craving, most of us think about wanting things, money, food, success, possessions. But in Buddhist wisdom, craving, tan, goes far deeper than material desires. It's the endless reaching of the mind. Not just for what we can touch, but for what we can feel. We crave certainty. We crave to be seen, to be right, to be loved in just the way we want. We crave control. We crave a life that stays within our comfort zone, even if that comfort is quietly killing us. It's strange, isn't it? How we sometimes cling to the very things that hurt us. A toxic relationship. An identity built on old pain. Even a sense of unworthiness, we hold onto it, because at least it feels familiar. But the Buddha saw this pattern long before psychology gave it a name. He said, "From craving arises sorrow. From craving arises fear. And the more you sit with that, the more true it feels." Think about it. We suffer when we don't get what we want. But we also suffer when we do get it, because now we fear losing it. We are always chasing or gripping or guarding, never really resting. I've seen this in myself. I've wanted peace, but only on my terms. I've tried to let go, but still needed someone to know I let go. Even in the quest for healing, the craving sneaks in through the back door. But here's what shifted everything for me. Realizing that craving isn't just about desire, it's about attachment to outcomes. Wanting is human, but needing life to unfold a certain way in order to be okay. That's where the suffering begins. So what's the way out? Not through suppression. Not through pretending we don't care. But through awareness. When you notice a craving, pause. Name it. Feel it without obeying it. Ask, what am I really longing for right now? Love. Safety. Control. Because often, the craving is just a signal pointing to something deeper that's been unseen. And the moment we see it clearly, we are no longer trapped by it. The goal isn't to stop wanting altogether. It's to stop being owned by what we want. And in that space, where you no longer chase or cling, you begin to feel something new. Not the high of getting what you want, but the peace of not needing it to feel whole. The fear of healing, why we don't let go. We often ask ourselves, if this hurts so much, why do I keep going back? Why can't I just let it go? We like to think it's because we are weak, or addicted to the drama. Sometimes we even say, half-jokingly, maybe I'm just addicted to suffering. But the truth is much softer and much deeper. It's not that we are addicted to pain. It's that we are afraid of what we've never known. Letting go of something painful doesn't just mean stepping away from suffering. It also means stepping into uncertainty. And uncertainty is terrifying. I've seen people return to toxic relationships not because they believe in them, but because a part of them still believes in the idea of what it could have been. They are not clinging to the reality. They are clinging to the dream. That dream is powerful. It's stitched together with old hopes, past tenderness, and what might have been. But clinging to that illusion keeps us from seeing the truth. This version of love, this version of life, it's hurting us now. And still, we stay. Because even pain can feel familiar. And healing, real, deep healing, can feel foreign, even frightening. What if you let go and nothing better comes? What if you heal and feel emptier than before? These are the quiet fears we carry, often without even knowing it. The Buddha once taught that illusion, Maya, clouds our vision. It makes us mistake shadows for light. It convinces us that what we know, no matter how painful, is safer than what we don't. But healing requires courage. Not the kind that screams and charges forward, but the quiet kind that whispers, I don't know what comes next, but I trust myself enough to find out. So ask yourself gently, what am I still holding on to, not because it brings me peace, but because I'm afraid of who I might be without it? That question doesn't demand an answer right away. It just opens a door. Because healing isn't a switch. It's a willingness. A slow softening towards something unknown, but kinder. And maybe, just maybe, the freedom you've been afraid of is already waiting on the other side of your letting go. The energy of habit, karmic momentum. Have you ever noticed how, when you're tired, stressed, or overwhelmed, you tend to fall back into your old patterns? You say the thing you promised you wouldn't. You react without thinking. You reach for what's familiar, even if it's not helpful. That's not weakness. That's habit energy, what Buddhist teachings call karmic momentum. Every time we think a certain thought or repeat a certain action, we carve a tiny groove in our consciousness. Not just metaphorically, but in how the mind literally moves. And over time, those grooves become paths. And those paths become highways. And before we know it, we are speeding down a road we didn't mean to take again. That's karmic habit energy. But here's the important part. Karma isn't fate. It's not a life sentence. It's just the direction things are currently moving until something conscious interrupts it. Let me give you a simple image. Imagine water running down a hillside. It always follows the same channels because they are already carved into the land. But what happens if you place even a small stone in the way? The water slows. It pauses. It begins to shift direction. That's what mindfulness does to habit energy. It doesn't bulldoze your past. It places a gentle stone in the stream. It interrupts the automatic flow just long enough for you to make a new choice. You don't need to fix your past karma. You just need to stop adding more of the same. And every conscious moment, every time you pause, breathe, and choose something new, you begin carving a new path. This is especially important when you're tired. Because exhaustion lowers our defenses. And when we are vulnerable, our oldest habits sneak back in, not because we are bad people, but because the mind clings to the familiar under pressure. So instead of judging yourself in those moments, just notice the road you're on. And ask, is this the direction I still want to go? Because you're not stuck. You're just practiced. And practice can be redirected. Every drop counts. The power of small moments. There's a simple but profound teaching from the Buddha that says, drop by drop, the water jar is filled. It might not sound dramatic. It doesn't promise instant transformation or overnight peace. But it holds a quiet truth we often overlook. That lasting change is built in the smallest of moments. One breath. One kind word. One time you paused before reacting. That's the drop. And over time, it adds up. But in a world that glorifies speed and intensity, we are trained to think it's not enough. If I'm not meditating for an hour a day, what's the point? If I still get angry sometimes, maybe I haven't changed at all. But that's not how transformation works. Real healing is not loud. It doesn't shout. It whispers. You're already changing every time you come back to the present. Every time you choose compassion over criticism. Every time you feel pain, but don't pass it on to someone else. And yes, it may not look like much. But that one conscious breath you took today, that was practice. That was progress. That was a drop in the jar. I've seen people completely turn their lives around not through grand gestures, but through showing up again and again for the small things. Tiny shifts in tone. Tiny spaces between thought and action. Tiny inner acknowledgements, I see myself. And I'm trying. And over time, those drops overflow. So if you're on this path and wondering if you're doing enough, this is your reminder. You are. Because every mindful step counts. Every soft choice you make counts. Every drop matters. The jar doesn't need to be full today. It just needs you to keep going. So the next time you doubt your progress or feel like you're not far enough along, remember this. The most powerful transformation doesn't come from doing more. It comes from doing consistently what brings you back to yourself. One breath. One drop. That's the way. You don't need to be perfect, just awake. There's something quietly revolutionary about this idea. You don't need to be perfect. You just need to be awake. In a world that constantly pushes us to do more, be better, get it right, this truth feels like a breath of fresh air. Because let's face it, mistakes happen. We lash out. We fall back into old habits. We say things we don't mean or don't say what we should. And when that happens, it's easy to spiral into guilt or shame. But in Buddhist wisdom, a mistake isn't a dead end. It's an invitation. An opening. A soft reminder to look deeper. You're not failing when you mess up. You're learning. There's a beautiful teaching that says, you're not starting over from the beginning. You're starting over with more wisdom. And that changes everything. Imagine if every time you lost your way, you didn't criticize yourself. You simply noticed. You paused. You said, I see it now. And then, gently, without drama, you began again. The Buddha never asked us to be flawless. He simply asked us to be aware. To keep returning to this moment with openness, not judgment. I've seen people try to be spiritual by trying to be perfect. And ironically, that striving creates even more tension, more self-rejection, more pressure to hold everything together. But awakening isn't about being polished. It's about being present. It's the moment you realize you're clenching your jaw and you soften. It's the moment you speak harshly and then breathe, apologize, and come back to kindness. It's choosing again and again to return, each time with more compassion. And the more we return with awareness, the more natural it becomes. Not because we've perfected ourselves, but because we've made peace with the practice of beginning again. So if you're watching this right now and feeling like you should be further along or should have known better, pause, drop the judgment, and remind yourself. Awareness, not perfection, is the path. You don't need to be flawless to be free. You just need the willingness to come back to yourself. Again and again and again. Choose again. Each moment is a seed. There's something deeply liberating about realizing this. You can always choose again. No matter how many times you've slipped. No matter how many times you've reacted in anger, shut down, or spiraled back into old habits. There is always this moment. Right here. Right now. Waiting to be lived differently. In Buddhist practice, we often talk about seeds, tiny moments of intention, thought, or action that get planted into the soil of the mind. Every breath you take in awareness. Every time you speak with kindness instead of blame. Every pause before a reaction is a seed. And no, it might not bloom instantly. But it will grow. Because that's what seeds do. I've met people who feel like it's too late. They say, I've been this way for so long, or I always fall back into the same mess. But the truth is, the past doesn't disqualify you from starting. It equips you. Because what matters most is not whether you failed, but whether you're willing to begin again. From this moment. And here's the beauty. You don't need a perfect plan. You don't need to wait for the next retreat, the next year, the next big shift. You just need to pause, breathe, and choose. That's it. That's the revolution. Not in some distant future, but in this exact second. Sometimes I think of this practice like walking in a forest. You may have taken a wrong turn miles back. You may have wandered in circles. But the path forward isn't back there. It's here. Where your feet are now. And the next step is yours to take. So ask yourself gently, what seed am I planting with this moment? Is it a seed of blame or understanding? Of fear or patience? Of numbness or presence? And remember, one seed may not change the whole landscape today. But it begins a direction. It shifts the wind. It tells the universe, I'm showing up differently now. Because your power doesn't lie in how perfectly you've lived. It lies in your willingness to meet the present with an open heart. This moment is yours. Not as a test, but as an invitation. So choose again. And again. And again. Spiritual life, the true fuel of our being. There's a powerful line from Buddhist wisdom that says, just as a candle cannot burn without fire, we cannot live without a spiritual life. And it's true, though we often forget. We move through our days checking boxes. We pay the bills, answer emails, make plans, chase goals. We fill our schedules to the brim, but somehow still feel empty inside. It's not that we are doing the wrong things. It's that we've forgotten to feed what's most essential. Because there's a part of you deeper than thought, older than memory, that longs for something more than progress or perfection. It longs to feel connected to something real, something quiet, something sacred. That is your spiritual life. And no, it doesn't have to look like rituals or robes or chanting on a mountaintop. It can be as simple as a silent morning walk. As ordinary as breathing with awareness while washing a dish. As honest as asking yourself what truly matters right now. Spiritual life isn't about believing in something abstract. It's about experiencing life fully, moment by moment. With open eyes. With an undefended heart. When we practice awareness, when we choose kindness, when we slow down enough to really feel the moment we are in, we begin to touch that fire within. The one that keeps the soul alive. Because happiness isn't waiting in some far-off outcome. It's not in the next achievement, or the next relationship, or the next version of yourself. It's in this breath. In this stillness. In this willingness to be here, completely. And that's what the spiritual path is. Not a theory. Not a performance. But nourishment. Nourishment for the part of you that's tired of chasing. That's done with proving. That just wants to come home. So let this be your reminder. You don't need more to feel whole. You just need to remember what you already carry. The fire is within you. Keep feeding it, not with noise or pressure, but with presence, with meaning, with love. Because in the end, it's not what we accomplish that sets us free. It's how deeply we live while we are here. You're not starting over, you're starting wiser. So maybe you've stumbled. Maybe you've fallen back into old patterns. Maybe you feel like you're standing at the same crossroads again. It's okay. This isn't failure. It's an invitation. You see, in Buddhist wisdom, a mistake is never a sign that you're broken. It's a gentle nudge to look deeper, to listen more carefully, to meet yourself with compassion, not criticism. The Buddha never asked us to be perfect. He didn't say, don't ever fall. He said, be aware. Choose again. Begin again when you need to. And here's the part we often forget. You're not starting from the beginning. You're starting from everything you've lived through. Everything you've learned. All the pain you've survived. All the insight you've gained. That's wisdom. And it walks with you, especially in your hardest moments. So if you find yourself in a familiar place, a pattern you promised you'd never repeat, just stop. Pause. Take a slow, conscious breath. And remember, this is not square one. This is the path unfolding exactly where you are. You can begin again. Not with shame, but with clarity. With kindness. With the quiet strength of someone who's been here before. And now knows a little more. It's like the candle and the flame. Just as a candle cannot burn without fire, men cannot live without a spiritual life. You are that flame. And every moment you return to yourself, to truth, to presence, you're keeping that inner light alive. So wherever you are right now, start there. Not because you're behind, but because this moment holds everything you need to go forward with love. Thank you for walking this path. And remember, you don't need to be perfect. You just need to come home to yourself again and again.